I'm gonna give you a pattern drafting lesson on a dress that I actually made a couple of months ago around the holiday season. I have received so many questions around how to draft this pattern, and I actually initially planned to release a video on it when I first made the dress. However, I never really got to do it, so today is the day. I always use a bodice block to my own measurements to modify patterns for whatever I want to make. So I would really recommend you have a look and check out my video on how to draft a bodice block step by step to your own measurements. Having a bodice block like this is really the key to creating any kind of pattern that you could possibly want to make. So have a look at that and then come back to this video to create this pattern for this dress. Alright, so I have my bodice block printed here, and I'm gonna make this in a miniature version for you to have a better understanding of what I'm doing. Obviously, you are gonna do this to scale. So we have the front of our bodice block and we have the back of our bodice block. And for starters, I'm gonna concentrate on the front. To start off, I'm going to cut out my bodice block so I can modify the darts and manipulate them. So I'm going to start with the front of my bodice block, and what you will have to do to manipulate the dart out of the way is to make an incision here where your shoulder dart is in the front, and then as well as down here at your waist dart. I'm also going to cut as close to my shoulder incision as possible. There's really just a tiny little bit that's holding my two sides of the bodice together. So now I'm going to place it on the front edge of my piece of paper so I have a straight line here, and I'm going to close by pivoting the shoulder dart like this, the shoulder dart completely like that. And now I can start to trace. Now you have the bodice without the shoulder dart, like so. So now I have that, I can have a think about the neckline that I want to achieve. The neckline is pretty square with rounded corners around the edges. So now you have to have a think and maybe take a measuring tape to your own body and measure whereabouts you want your neckline to hit. So say in this instance, I would want the neckline to hit somewhere above the arm side line, so not that much higher, but just a little bit. So I'm gonna make a mark here. So naturally the arm side line leads to the end of our armhole right here. So what you want is to, from that mark that you made, make a straight line just about where your apex of your bust is. Something else that we want to anticipate already is where our shoulder strap is going to hit. The shoulder strap is later going to hold the sleeve for us. We don't want our shoulder strap to hit right at the end of our shoulder. I have made the experience with a few patterns now that when I let my shoulder strap end at the very end of my shoulder, usually my shoulder straps slide off quite easily. So instead, we are going to move the end of our shoulder point a little bit inwards, a little bit upwards on our shoulder. So say I would want it to hit right here. Now we can have a think about how wide we want our shoulder strap to be. For me, in my case, my shoulder strap was about 4 centimeters. Now that we have that, we can continue and finish the neckline. So what I did is I basically just drew down a line that felt natural. It doesn't have a specific angle, somewhere towards the neckline. So something looking like this. And I didn't connect the 2 points, but rather I grabbed a curved ruler and created a curve here. So this is the neckline for the front. Now I already know that this end of my armhole is probably going to be too high in my armpit. I need to lower this a little bit. So I also lowered this by probably 2 to 3 centimeters if I remember correctly. You can always cut this out later, but this is just to get a head start. And now we need to draw and redraw our armhole curve to that new end point. And this is already the finished front pattern. So this is what the front pattern is going to look like, and you can see we have quite a wide dart. You're not going to cut the dart in your fabric. I'm just doing this to demonstrate. Once the dart is closed, we have a really beautiful bust curve. So the front piece is finished. Now we can continue with the back piece. So we're gonna again place it on our edge of our piece of paper, and then we're gonna start tracing. We don't have to draw in our shoulder dart, but we do have to draw in our waist dart. So now what we can do is we can use our front piece and place it so that the center front is aligned with the center back. And this is going to help us to understand how we need to manipulate the shoulder curve here. So the shoulder curve changes quite a bit, which also is going to help us determine where our strap is going to hit. So the strap is going to hit just where the strap of the front hits naturally, and then also at the beginning of where the shoulder dart was initially. And then we can redraw the shoulder curve like this. You could also mimic, if you wanted to, your neckline for the back. However, I did not do that because I wanted it to be a little bit more closed. So I drew a new neckline in the back, just a little bit raised from my arm side line. I also kind of like aligned it where my dart hits, and then I drew a new line for my shoulder strap, and then I also again mimicked the curve that I had in the front. And this is our back piece. We can cut that out too. Now, something else you want to check is that your side seam for the back and the front match up, and you can see that that's not the case here. So something that you can easily do is just align the two side seams and then correct the waistline. So now I'm going to show you how you can create the pattern for your sleeve. So what I like doing is I take a piece of paper and I create a fold that I can work on. So I'm going to work on this side of the edge of my piece of paper. You can start by simply making a mark somewhere random on that edge, which is going to be the end of your shoulder. Now you grab either your front or your back piece. In this case, I took my back piece and I use this to line up the tip of my shoulder to that line I just created. And then I'm going to mark my arm side line. I'm going to use that as a guideline. Now, what you want is your measurement from your tip of your shoulder down to just about where you want the end of your sleeve to be. That's the entire length of your sleeve. You take that measurement and you mark it on this fold. This is evidently not up to scale, so I'm going to say the end of my sleeve is probably going to hit somewhere here. And now what you want to do is you want to measure the widest point of your upper arm, which is roughly about where the arm side line is. So you take your tape measure, you take your upper arm and you measure it. And you don't want it to be super tight. You want there to be a bit of room, a bit of wiggle room for the sleeve to, breathe and for you to have comfort. And then you take that measurement, you take half of that measurement and you apply it to this line. And that's almost all you need. The other thing you need is you need the circumference of your wrist or where your sleeve hits. So you want to make sure that you can go through here. Then you take that measurement, you take half of it and again apply it onto this line, which is the end of your arm. Now you can continue and connect these 2 points. And up next, you're simply going to create by hand, freestyle, a beautiful S curve from the tip of your shoulder to your arm side line. Something looking like that. I'm gonna extend this just a little bit, and that's really how you can draw a sleeve. Again, if you want your sleeve to be well fitted and not be ruffled in your armhole, you will have to keep in mind the circumference of your armhole, which you measure from one tip of your shoulder all the way around here to the other tip of your shoulder. If you keep that distance in mind and you apply half of that distance onto that S curve, you should be good and you should have a well-fitted sleeve. However, if you're like me and you like a bit of a ruffle in your shoulder, you can have more ease in your shoulder curve. And this is how you make the sleeve pattern, which is gonna go in here. And now I'm gonna show you how you cut all of those pieces and how to create the circle skirt. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this colored piece of paper, gonna fold it in half to demonstrate to you how you cut a circle skirt. So to create a circle skirt, you have to take your fabric, which we imagine this blue paper is, and we're going to halve that and create a fold here. So now this edge has to be at least as long as you want your skirt to be, if not a little bit longer, because we are going to remove some of it for our waist seam. Now what we want to do is we want to create a half circle here, one for the waistline and one for the hem of the skirt. To create the waistline circle, we are going, or half circle in that instance, we are going to take our waist measurement and divide it by half, and we divide that by half too, so we have 1/4 of our waist circumference. We are then going to take a pen. You do this to scale in real life like this as well, and you grab your pen at the end of your measuring tape, and then the other hand is going to hold the tape measure about the measurement that you decided is 1/4 of your waist circumference. You then hold that measurement down into this corner of your fabric. In this case, it's a piece of paper, and you're going to do this to create a half circle. And you hold it again to that point, and then you just swoosh around. So we take our skirt length from the waist seam down to mid-calf, and then we add the distance from this end of our piece of paper to where the waist seam hits with the measurement of the length of our skirt plus that distance that I just pointed out. And then we are going to again swoosh all the way around here, and we have our skirt pattern. And this is going to be your skirt, the back and the front. And it's going to drape beautifully because this is the 45-degree diagonal line, as you can see on this line here, which is your new center front, and it's going to drape very beautifully around your hips. So this is our skirt. And this is it. This is the pattern. That's all you have to do. It's actually not that complicated, really. Especially if you keep in mind all of your notches and your marks and your center front and your center back, etc., etc. You will be quite quick with this. Now, I worked this out with velvet, which is a little bit more difficult to work with than normal fabric or other kind of fabric, really. And you want to cut all of these pieces except for the sleeves in 2 layers, which is your shell fabric, in my case the velvet, and a lining fabric, which I used chiffon, but you can also use just some normal satin lining. And I hope you have fun with this. I hope you can appropriate this for whatever kind of design you could possibly come up with, and I wish you all success. If you end up making this pattern and you end up with a beautiful result, please feel free to tag me on Instagram. I would love to see your makes. See you soon!